Last week, I arrived home from work, took a shower and changed, and then began cooking some food. During this time, I remembered that I heard my doorbell ring. I walked over to the front of the house and opened the door. When I did, I saw a man standing there who I did not recognize. He said that he had followed me home and wanted to know if he could stay at my place tonight. I must have looked at him like he was crazy. The guy then said that it would just be one night, as if that makes it any better. I said no and then shut the door in his face. I made sure to lock it as well. The man then started knocking on the door. I wasn't going to open it though. As I cooked, I heard him continue to knock for the next 10 minutes, almost non-stop. Finally, he left. I haven't seen him since, and I hope I never do again. I went camping with my friend Alyssa last summer. We brought a tent and went to a campground that was very quiet. When we set up the tent, we were the only people in that immediate area. After lots of hiking, we went back to camp, hung out for a bit, and then went to bed. My sleeping bag was closest to the tent door, and Alyssa's was on the other side. Alyssa seemed to fall asleep very easy, but I could not sleep. I was just not comfortable really, and I was paranoid about wild animals. But after lying awake for probably an hour, I heard a noise. It was somebody walking nearby the tent. I looked and saw a shadow of somebody go right up to our tent. Then, very slowly and quietly, they started to unzip it. Before I could see the person or anything, I jumped up and hit them with a flashlight as hard as I could. The person took off running. I woke up Alyssa, and we both immediately packed up and left. I have a dog who's still fairly young, and I've trained him pretty well, but he still barks at anything and everything. I live by myself in a house that I rent, and a couple of weeks ago it was a pretty normal night. My dog and I had been relaxing in the living room. When it got pretty late, I was about to go to bed. That's when my dog went to the back side of the house and started barking. I walked over and assumed that maybe he saw a squirrel run by in a tree in the backyard or something. When I looked out the window though, I saw nothing. My dog was right by the back door barking like he wanted to be let out. But I wasn't going to do that because I didn't want him waking the neighbors, and he had been out not long ago. I took him to my bedroom where his dog bed is, and he stopped barking and calmed down. But not long after, he ran back to the back side of the house and started barking again. I was really curious, so I went over and looked out of a window once more. My dog was at the back door, and I saw a man standing right on the other side of the back door outside, right up against my house. When the guy saw me looking at him, he took off. I never saw him again, but I'm glad my dog had been barking that night. I was walking my dog a couple of months ago down my street. My dog's name is Max, and he loves to go on walks. So the neighborhood is generally pretty quiet overall. When Max and I were a few blocks away from home, this car backed out of a driveway right in front of us. I thought nothing of it. It drove away and we kept walking. However, not too long after that, I saw the car driving back. It was strange because it had just left. Max and I kept walking, but I saw the car again passing us by. We turned around and headed back home a short time later. As we were walking back home, I saw the car pass us in each direction about 2 more times. Then, when we reached our street, the car started approaching us from behind and going real slow. I had enough, and Max and I just ran for it to the house. We made it inside, and I saw the car park on the side of the road for a short time in front of our house, before finally it drove away. I sat in my living room reading one night. It was very relaxing, until I heard the sound of glass breaking coming from the back of the house. I knew that was not a normal sound. I got up and ran out of the room very quickly. I went straight for my bedroom. When I got there, I heard that somebody else was inside the house with me. I locked my bedroom door and called the cops. For the next bit of time, I didn't really hear anything at all. It's all kind of a blur though, looking back. The next thing I knew, the cops were there, but whoever broke in my house was gone. They didn't even steal anything. I don't know who did it or why. I once house sat for a good friend of mine. Her and her husband lived about 10 minutes away, and they went on vacation. I had been to her house many times before, and it was pretty nice, and much nicer than my place. So anyways, my second day there, I had recently got back from my job to my friend's place. About an hour later, I was passing by the back of the house, and noticed some random guy standing in the backyard. Now, the backyard was entirely fenced in, so I had no idea who he was. He saw me notice him through the glass. I walked over to a window and opened it slightly. I asked him who he was. The guy said that he knew I must be house-sitting and that he was the gardener. Now, I knew my friend well, and they didn't have a gardener. The guy had no tools or gardening equipment either. I told him I was calling the cops. As soon as I did, he took off running. I never saw him again after that. I was jogging through the park really early one morning at 5 a.m. It was generally very quiet at this time, and I would never see anybody out on my runs. As I passed through, though, I noticed something. There was what looked like a man hiding behind a tree. It was a strange sight because he wasn't just standing behind it. It looked like he was deliberately trying to hide. I just kept jogging down the path and didn't pay him much attention. Not long after that, maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and I heard footsteps jogging behind me. I looked back, and the same guy was there who I had seen hiding behind a tree. It was really weird. I started going faster. It seemed like the guy behind me started going faster too. I've run for quite a long time though, so I felt like I could outrun him, so I went even faster. For a short time, he kept up, but then I stopped hearing him altogether. I made it back home and took a break from jogging through that park. I was home by myself one time as a teenager. It was nighttime and my family lived out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, our neighbors were not even that close at all and nobody ever came to our door, ever. We were really out in the middle of nowhere. It was nighttime, about 10 o'clock. My parents would be arriving back within the hour. Out of nowhere, I heard the sound of a very loud knock coming from the front door. I was insanely freaked out. The knocks were like the person was pounding on the door as hard as they possibly could. I walked over to a nearby window and looked out. I saw someone standing there but couldn't make out who it was or many details at all because it was very dark. I decided not to answer the door. For the next 20 minutes I heard nothing until the knocking randomly started again. I completely ignored it. Eventually it stopped. My parents got home about an hour later. I never knew who that person was. I used to work at a Walmart a really long time ago. One time, I got off work late, like an hour before close, so it was pretty late at night. The store was quiet, and I left and was walking to my car in the parking lot. I had parked in the way back, so it was a bit of a walk there. On my way, I remember this guy started walking alongside me. I looked over at him, and he said hi. Then he asked if I would be able to give him a ride home. I said no, because I didn't know the guy at all. The guy didn't say anything. He slowed down, and I figured he was going to walk away. I continued to my car. When I got there, the man was still walking a little ways behind me though, maybe 20 feet back. As soon as I started to open my car door, I heard him start running. I quickly got inside and slammed the door shut. The man ran up and tried opening my door just after I locked it. Then he started banging on the window. I quickly drove away. I had this friend in college that would always invite me over to his place to watch sports. His name is Aiden, and he had an apartment with a roommate and a huge TV that was fun to watch the games on. So one time I went over to his place to watch a game at night. When I got over there, it was him, his roommate, me, and another one of our friends named James. It was towards the end of the game, and we all heard a knock on the apartment door. Aiden got up to go see who was there. I heard him open the door and then heard a man's voice talking to him. I didn't bother to get up or anything though. All of a sudden, I heard the door slam shut and Aiden came back into the room. He said some crazy guy tried to enter the apartment for no reason. We talked about it briefly, and I remember he mentioned that the guy was wearing an orange hat and he seemed like he might be crazy. When the game ended, I left and went to my car in the parking lot of the apartment complex. After I got in my car, I saw a guy in an orange hat jogging towards me. I drove away and didn't stop to see what he wanted. I was driving home from work one quiet night. It was late and nobody else was out on the roads. The closer I got to home, the more out in the country I was. However, I remember seeing somebody pull onto the road randomly behind me. I thought nothing of it and kept driving with this new car behind me now. We both kept going and eventually I turned. The car behind me did as well. On this new road, the car got closer and closer to me. Now it was literally right on my tail. I slowed down to let the car go past and moved to the side, but the car did not move past me, so I slowed down completely and then stopped on the side of the road. To my surprise, the car stopped too. After we both came to a complete stop, I saw these two masked men suddenly get out of the car. They both came running for me. I quickly put the car back into drive and got out of there. The men ran back to their car. I then drove to the nearest police station and was able to lose them when they didn't go there. I met my friend at a restaurant one night and we were eating together. We were enjoying each other's company and having a good time. I just remember that at one point though, I noticed this guy staring at me. He was sitting far away and was alone by himself at a table. He looked at me in a way that made me a little bit uncomfortable. I just ignored him though. Mostly, I stayed engaged in the conversation I was having with my friend. At one point though, I saw the man staring at me intently. Then he got up and he left. I was relieved to see that. Now that he was gone, I felt more relaxed. Maybe 30 minutes later, my friend and I got up to leave. We said bye to each other and then went our separate ways to our vehicles in the parking lot. When I got inside my car though, I heard a noise behind me. I looked back and saw the same guy from the restaurant. I literally screamed and then ran back inside the building. The police were called, but when they arrived, the man was gone. I was walking my dog kind of late one night, not too long ago. I try to walk him every day because he has a lot of energy. On this day though, I had worked really late. Still, we went for a walk, just a lot later than usual. We would normally just walk around the neighborhood and not go too far away. That's what we were doing on this night, and when we started heading back though, I noticed my dog stopping kind of a lot. Normally, he's tugging on the leash and going fast. He stopped and started barking in the opposite direction behind us a few times. Every time that I looked, I didn't see anything, not even a rabbit or a squirrel. It was strange, but we kept going. Finally, we made it back home. As I started to walk in the front yard, my dog suddenly started barking again and looked back. This time when I turned around, I saw this random guy running straight for us. I quickly ran to the front door with my dog and we both just barely made it in and locked the door. The guy tried opening the door, and after he couldn't get in, he sprinted off the property. It was one of the scariest moments of my life. I went for a walk one night to get my steps in. It was nighttime because I had work earlier. There was a path by my house through the woods that was nice, and I had walked it many times before. On this night, there was nobody else out there, and I was by myself. As I paced through the woods, I got to this really dense part. That's when I heard movement within the trees. It made me a little nervous, but I was really thinking that it was probably an animal. I kept walking and passed it by. But when I had made it past, I heard whatever it was emerge from the woods. I glanced back, surprised. What I saw was not an animal, but a man dressed in all black and a ski mask. He was looking right at me. Without hesitation, I just took off running. The man ran after me. I ran like my life depended on it and didn't look back. I'm not sure when, but the man stopped chasing me. When I made it out of the woods, I was fine. I was out camping by myself one night in the woods. I was way out there in a spot that I had been to once before. It was very quiet and I hadn't seen anybody else out on the trails or anything. After I cooked some food for dinner, I got into my tent for the night. At around 9 p.m., I drifted off to sleep in the tent. However, I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning. I heard what I assumed at first to be an animal walking right next to my tent. They were sort of rubbing against it as they walked by. I was afraid that it might be a bear, but as I looked at the shadow and listened, I quickly realized that no animal moved like that. They made it around to the opening and then the tent started to unzip. When it did, I saw the face of some creepy-looking guy. As soon as I saw him, I screamed that I had a gun and I would shoot him. He quickly left. Then I packed up all my stuff and got out of there and didn't see the man. I have no clue where he came from or what he was doing. I also did not have a gun, but I'm glad that the threat scared him off. One night, I was staying up late watching TV. My wife was out of town for work, so I was being a lazy slob. After a relaxing night, I finally got up to go to bed. When I passed through the kitchen, I saw out of the back window into the yard. There was a man standing out there wearing this weird mask thing. It looked like a cat mask or something like that. Our backyard is small and fenced in, so I didn't know how he got there. I watched him watching me from the backyard. When he saw me, he did not move. I walked over to the back door and then opened it, hoping to scare him off. He did nothing. I kept yelling at him to get out of my yard. He started walking towards me, and I went back in and shut the door. But the man did not try to enter my house. Instead, he walked around it to the front yard. I figured he was leaving, so I went to bed. However, I was woken up that night at 2 o'clock in the morning. I heard a very loud banging coming from my back door. I got up and ran over to the door. When I got there, the banging stopped and nobody was there. I was driving to work really early one morning. It was still dark out. The roads were very quiet, but as I was driving, I noticed a car following behind me. It was driving pretty erratic though. It was speeding up and slowing down and swerving around a little bit. I just hoped that they wouldn't crash. I continued with my drive, and to my surprise, the car followed me all the way to work. It wasn't one of my coworkers' cars, so it seemed strange. After parking, this man got out. He was dressed pretty much like a clown. He started walking over to me. I just took off running. I ran into work, went inside, and didn't look back. Thankfully, the man did not go inside. When I got off of work, he was gone. I had agreed to buy a new cell phone on Craigslist one night. The ad said it worked and it was a great price, so I showed up at the address at the agreed time. It was a house, and I walked up and knocked on the door. Pretty quickly, a woman answered it. She invited me in and then said that her boyfriend was the one selling the iPhone and that he was downstairs. She pointed to an open basement door which was not too far away. Then the woman walked off and I started down the basement stairs. But all the basement lights were off. I couldn't see anything, but I heard a man's voice call me down from somewhere in the basement. As I slowly walked the stairs, I couldn't find a light switch anywhere. This just seemed way too sketchy. I stopped on the stairs and still didn't see the guy anywhere. I could barely see anything with how dark it was. Then the door at the top of the stairs suddenly shut behind me. That's when I knew I had to leave. I ran to the door and shoved it open. The woman was on the other side and she got pushed back when I opened the door. I ran past her, out the door, and left. I went to a pretty large university when I was in college. In one class in particular, there was a lecture hall where I would always sit in the same spot every time. I would sit in my spot and take notes, and unfortunately I didn't have any friends in the class. One day I showed up for class and there was this random guy sitting in my spot. I had never seen him before and he didn't really look like a student. I went and sat across the room in a completely different spot. The next time that we had class, I got there early and the guy was in my seat again, already there. It was just him and I in the room. I asked him if he was new to the school, but he just ignored me. Fast forward to that night. I was in the library on campus really late studying. I left at close to midnight. When I made it outside, I saw one car in the parking lot. The engine was running, and the same guy was behind the wheel. I ran around the back side of the library to my dorm. I never saw that guy again. I went to the station one day to take the train. It was really busy with a bunch of other people there. I saw them all on the other side waiting. I was early and would not be getting on that train, so I just sat down on a bench with not as many people on my side and waited. I looked around at all the people, but even with them all I soon noticed something. There was this one guy who seemed to be staring at me really creepy. I looked away and then looked back a short time later. He was still staring at me. Soon the train arrived and everybody cleared out. Not the man though, he remained staring at me in the same place. When my train arrived, I got up and I saw the man getting up as well. I didn't want him on my train, so I got up and left. I took a taxi instead, and I'm glad that I avoided that creepy guy. As I sat at home one night, it was just before I was going to go to bed. I heard from the other room a knocking coming from the back door of the house. It was strange because why would somebody be knocking on the back door? I got up and walked over to the kitchen and looked out of a window first. There was a man there at the door who was dressed kind of like a farmer, and I don't live out in the country, I live in the city, so it was strange. I wanted him off my property. Just before I was about to answer the door though, he started banging on it real loud and aggressive. Then he noticed me walking over to the door. He suddenly stopped and took off running at that point and then went away. I thought maybe he was gone, but moments later I heard him now banging loudly on the front door. I didn't know what on earth this guy was doing. I moved towards the front of the house and he quickly ran off into the night. I still don't know what exactly was happening there. I worked at a gas station a long time ago. One time I was working an overnight shift. It was very quiet and I was working by myself. The station was off a pretty quiet road, so things always seemed a little bit spooky at night. Out of nowhere on this night, I heard the door open. A man walked in. It was weird because I hadn't seen or heard any cars at all. The guy seemed sketchy from the start and he walked up to me. He said that his car had broken down and asked if I could just help him out quick. He said he needed me to tell him if his lights turned on when he tried starting it. I figured I could do that, so I followed the man outside. However, he walked around the building and started to go behind it. There was no way a car would be back in the grass and woods behind the building. I instantly stopped following him and went back inside. The man called out to me once, but I ignored him. After I got back inside, he didn't return. I never saw him again. I was having a relaxing evening one night, sitting on the couch and reading. It was pretty late when I heard a knocking on the door. This seemed odd. Who would be at my door so late at night? I got up and walked over to the front door. As I was almost there, I heard the knocking again. But then I realized something. The knocking was not coming from the front door. It was coming from inside the coat closet, which was inside my house. I turned around and ran just about as fast as I could for the stairs. When I was running up them, I heard the closet door opening. I ran into my bedroom, locked the door, and called 911. Then I hid under my bed like a scared little kid. When the police arrived, they found nobody inside the house. Whoever had done it had left. I got off work really late one night at 1 o'clock in the morning. I was tired and looking forward to getting home and going to sleep. The roads were very quiet as I got closer and closer to my place. At one point, I came to a red light at an intersection. I sat there at the light just waiting for it to turn green. Out of nowhere, I saw something out of the corner of my eye. I looked over and this really creepy looking man was right at my driver's window. He tried to open the door and then he started knocking on the window. I was so creeped out, I wanted to just drive away, even though the light was still red. But then the guy ran in front of my car like he wasn't going to let me drive off. I put my car in reverse, backed up, made a quick U-turn, and then got out of there. That remains one of the scariest moments of my life. After arriving home from work one night, I went upstairs to go to bed. However, I was sure that I heard a sound coming from above me. The only thing up there was the attic, and I hadn't been up there in years. I couldn't tell by the sound exactly what it was, maybe a squirrel or something. Still, I decided I better go check. I went out into the hallway and pulled the ladder down. When I climbed up into the attic, at first it was very dark. There was a bunch of boxes and stuff over there. Then, out of nowhere, this man came out from behind a box. He looked dirty and disheveled and was heading straight for me. I quickly closed the door and ran back downstairs. I ran all the way back down to the main floor and then left the house. Then I called the cops. When they arrived, they found the man hiding in the attic still. I don't know how he got in. I worked at a home improvement store for a while a few years back. One day I was inside of the store organizing items in one of the aisles. Out of nowhere, somebody entered the aisle. I didn't even look over though, but I could tell that someone was there. I heard footsteps moving straight for me, so I finally turned around and looked. There was a man standing there holding this piece of wood that looked like a club. He had this insane grin on his face and was looking right at me. I said, "Hi, can I help you find something?" The man said nothing but started running at me. I turned and just bolted out of there. The man chased after me out of the aisle and through the store. I ran as fast as I could, and eventually I lost him and I ran right out of the building. I stopped in the parking lot and noticed police cars pulling up. Somebody had already called the cops on this guy. A while later, he was located in the store and arrested. That was my craziest experience working there. One time, I was at the supermarket sort of late at night. When I left the store, I was walking out in the parking lot to my car. As I approached, I noticed this man running across the parking lot in my direction. I quickly hurried up and went inside my car. The man continued running. I was hoping that he would go into the vehicle that was parked next to mine, because there weren't really any others around. But no, he went right up to my driver's side window. He immediately started knocking on the window. I did not roll it down, but I heard the man start to ask me for a ride. The guy was acting really weird, so I said no, and I put my car into reverse. As I drove away, I saw the man then getting into the car that was parked next to mine. I quickly drove around the building and out of his sight. Because of this, he was unable to follow me. That man didn't need a ride at all. It makes me wonder what his real plans were. I was doing yard work one sunny morning. It took me an hour to mow the lawn, which I always enjoyed doing. After I was done, I put the lawnmower back into the garage. Then I went to do some gardening, so I walked out to the shed in the backyard. As soon as I opened it up though, the first thing I saw was this crazy looking man. He was inside the shed and instantly started charging at me. As a reaction, I just ran all the way back to my house and then went inside. To my surprise, just after locking the door, the man tried opening it. He then started angrily banging on the door like crazy. It only lasted for like 10 seconds, and I thought that he was going to go away. So I went over to the door to look, only to hear the sound of smashing glass coming from the living room. I looked over and saw a giant rock on the ground. I looked out the window and saw the man running off into the street. I called the cops and waited for them. They showed up and I told them what happened. Then they searched for the man. He ended up being found down the block about a half a mile. I live alone in an apartment building on the edge of the city. I live on the first floor and on the back side of the apartment complex building. One night I was in bed and turned off all the lights to go to sleep. Then I laid down and started to relax. Just then I heard this noise coming from over near the window. I opened my eyes and looked around. When I got to my window, I saw it. There was a man looking directly into my bedroom. It was the single creepiest thing I've ever seen in my life. I instantly turned the lights back on and ran out of there. By the time I composed myself and went back into the bedroom, he was gone. I reported him to the apartment complex management and covered my windows since then. I'm glad that I haven't seen the guy since that night. "Give me my $1 back," the man said. He was unhappy because the soda fountain was apparently flat. This situation wasn't in the instruction manual when I got hired at McDonald's. I wasn't sure what to do. The man then started to reach over the counter. I moved back and told him that I would refund him his $1. To me, it didn't seem like a big deal, and if I got in trouble, I would cover it with my own money. It was just $1 after all. So I handed the man $1, who took it and then asked for a Big Mac. I told him the price, and the man then demanded it free for his troubles. I wasn't going to go this far. I told the man off, and he angrily turned around and walked out. But then moments later, he came back inside with a baseball bat. The man then swung the bat around recklessly, destroying many things. I called the cops, and all the employees hid in the back. When the police arrived, they arrested the man, but not before he took a bow for his performance. As I walked home from the supermarket one sunny morning, I was enjoying the nice weather. But out of nowhere, I heard someone shout my name from behind me. I looked back and saw no one. It was really weird. I was wondering who had said it, but I just kept walking. What else could I do? When I was almost back, I heard it again. I turned around and once more saw nothing. This time, I asked who was there, but nobody answered, so I continued on. I got home, put my groceries away, and forgot about it. But late that night, as I was by myself in my apartment, I heard a noise coming from outside my door. Somebody was calling my name again, that same person. I went over to the door and heard somebody running away. I looked out and nobody was there. They never returned. I went on vacation with my best friend Carly one time. One night we went out to this nightclub that was close to our hotel. It was fun at first, with lots of other people there having a good time. We sat down at one point with our drinks. This random guy came and sat down right next to us and just stared at us. At first, I didn't think too much of it, but soon it seemed really weird. He was inching closer and closer to us. We decided to move and went someplace else. A while later though, the guy showed up near us again. At this point, we had been at the club for a long time and decided to just leave. Carly and I left the club and we were going to go to another one, but as soon as we got out, we saw that same guy. We quickly decided to go back to our hotel instead. As we walked back, the man trailed us. When we got to the hotel, we went inside very fast and got to the elevator. You needed a key to use it, and the doors closed just before the man got there. One time, I was driving back home on these quiet country roads. Unfortunately for me, my car ended up running out of gas. I came to a stop on the side of the road and looked around. There were no other cars or anything. I knew that there was a gas station about a mile away, so I decided to try to walk there. I couldn't quite remember exactly where it was, but I tried my best to figure it out. I walked up and down some roads, but it was really dark and I couldn't see very well. As I made my way from one street to another, I was hoping to see something familiar. Then I turned a corner onto this random street. There was dense forest on each side. I heard a noise and I looked. There was like 20 people all standing sort of in the woods, and they were all looking at me. There was no light or anything, and nobody was making any noises. It was so weird. It was just us staring at each other for like 10 seconds. Then I quickly turned around and just ran away from there. I jogged down roads until I finally found the gas station. I later drove back to the spot where the people were, but nobody was there anymore. There was no house in the area or anything like that either. A couple of winters ago, I went with my friend to a ski resort. I love to ski and go whenever I can. This place was really nice, and we went up and down the hill as much as we could. It was one of my better ski trips, and everything was going well. But on my last time down the hill, at one point I saw something. This guy was hiding behind a tree and staring at me as I went past. It was really strange. People were not supposed to be on the hill like that. I quickly blew past him though and forgot about it. I was done skiing after that run, and my friend and I got food and then went back to the hotel room. When we were in there, I heard somebody randomly trying to open the door at close to midnight. I got up and looked through the peephole. It was the same guy from the ski hill. I didn't know what he was doing, but he had this creepy grin on his face. I watched him then turn and start to walk away, but before he was out of my sight, he stopped, turned around, and waved at me. It was like he knew I was watching him. A few weeks ago, I was shopping at the Blue Box down the street. Another name for this is Walmart. I was walking inside trying to get some basic items when I saw this man. He was running barefoot up and down this one aisle really fast. Nobody else was in sight. I had no idea what was going on, so I tried to walk past him without going on his running aisle. So as I shopped in a nearby aisle, I could hear him running back and forth. I would see him going past where I was every so often. I just shook my head, collected what I needed, and walked away. I checked out and then left and went back home. Later that night, I was inside my house. I heard something outside and went to the window to look. The same guy was running back and forth in my front yard. I had never seen him before this night, and I had no idea what he was doing there. As soon as he noticed me, though, he took off and ran away, sprinting down the street, still barefoot. When I looked out of my apartment window at midnight, I saw this one woman just standing there, staring at me. She was a long distance away, and it was like she was already looking at me before I looked out of the window. I didn't recognize her, so I watched her for a few seconds to see what she would do. She did nothing but keep looking in my direction. I thought it was weird, so I closed the blinds and walked away. I ended up going to bed at that point. The next morning, I woke up at 6:30 a.m. and got up and went into the living room. I opened the blinds like I do every morning. When I did, this woman was standing right there on my balcony. I ran away and actually left my apartment. After calming down, I returned and she was gone. I never saw her again. I have no idea where she went, and my apartment is on the second floor, so how did she get up there? I guess she could climb, but that's really weird. I was watching TV on the couch one night, and when it got really late, I got up to go to bed. However, I noticed out the front living room window that somebody was standing in the middle of the street. After looking closer, I noticed that it was a man who was dressed as a clown. He was just standing there looking in my direction. It was pretty creepy. I closed the shades and then headed to bed. I figured that the creepy clown guy would just go away. After getting ready for bed, I entered my bedroom to sleep, but as soon as I got into my room, I looked to my window and saw the clown man right there. He was looking right into my bedroom and staring at me. I ran out of the room as quick as humanly possible. I didn't know what to do, so I found a baseball bat, and then I decided to go back to my room. However, when I got there, the clown was gone. I looked through all the windows and couldn't find him anywhere, so I covered them, and then I went to sleep. I never saw the clown again. Using mainly spoons, Bobby dug a tunnel underground, and though it took a while, he made it surprisingly far. His goal was to build a secret hideout where he could furnish the room and turn it into a hangout spot. After the second day of digging, Bobby was finally underground fully. On the third day of his project, his tunnel went a long ways, but then he struck something. After clearing more dirt, it was proven to be a wall. Bobby then went above ground to where the wall was located, which was slightly in the woods. After looking around, he found a trapdoor hidden under a bush. There was already a secret room underground which was abandoned, but it looked like somebody had been living there recently. Bobby went inside of the room and found several of his own items in there. Whoever lived there had been stealing from him. I live by myself in an apartment on the second floor. There's a large parking lot that I can see down from my balcony and windows. One night, a few weeks ago, I was just closing the blinds at night before I go to bed like I always do. Normally at that time, the parking lot is always pretty quiet with it being late, other than maybe some weekends. But as I was doing this, I noticed that there appeared to be a man that was kind of standing randomly in the parking lot. And the strange thing is that he appeared to be looking up at me. Maybe he had just noticed me in the window though. I just closed the blinds like normal. But after I did that, I got curious, so I peeked through about 10 or 15 seconds later. When I did, I saw that the man was still there and still looking at me. I wasn't sure what to make of this, so I decided to just move on. I continued getting ready for bed. Maybe 15 minutes later, before getting into my bed, I looked out of my bedroom window. This one also looked over the parking lot. When I did, I saw the same man, still there, still in the same spot, and still staring at me. It really freaked me out. One time, I was working really late at the office. I had a big project that I was working on and had stayed a little bit late the previous night as well. This night was much later though. In fact, I was the only person left. I kept working though. At one point, I heard a door open from far behind me and footsteps. I didn't know who that would be and I looked back. But when I turned around, I didn't really have a great view and I heard footsteps quickly going out of my sight behind some cubicles. I was curious though, so I got up and walked over there. When I did, I saw one man sitting at a desk. He had blonde hair and was looking at a folder. He looked up at me, smiled, and said hi. Then he commented how he was stuck working late. I said hi back to him and then told him that that was too bad and for him to have a good night. Then I walked back over to my desk, packed up my stuff, and left. The man that I had talked to was sitting at the desk of a woman named Cindy. I knew that he didn't work there at all. After going outside, I saw that one of the windows was smashed. I called the police and then drove home as quick as I could. I live alone in a studio apartment in the city, and this happened about 2.5 years ago. One night I had gone to bed and was sleeping until I randomly woke up. I thought that I heard a noise and I sat up in bed and looked around. As I scanned my room, nothing appeared out of place and things seemed fine. I also didn't hear anything. I figured that what I had heard must have just been something from outside, so I laid back down to try to go back to sleep. However, just moments later, I heard the closet door in the corner of my room opening. I looked and saw a man run through my bedroom and then leave. I was too shocked to move at first, but when he left, I quickly got up and sprinted to my door and locked it. I have no idea how that man got into my apartment or how long he had been in there, and I have no idea who he was. After that, I couldn't sleep for the rest of the night. Thankfully, the man never returned. As I drove home from work, it was a very quiet night with it being almost 1 o'clock in the morning. I was pretty tired because I had been at work since the early afternoon, so I wasn't paying great attention, but about halfway home, I noticed a car was following me. We were the only 2 cars on the road, but I didn't really think too much of it. When I had made it to my neighborhood and the car was still there though, I got suspicious. Still, it could have just been a neighbor. Soon, I made it to my driveway and I turned in. When I did, the car kept going down the street. I felt better for a moment until I saw the brake lights of the car. I quickly got out of my vehicle and ran inside to my house. As soon as I made it in, I looked out the window. The car was now reversing in front of my house. Then it stopped and the driver's window rolled down. Behind the wheel was one of the creepiest looking guys I've ever seen in my life. He was staring at me with this creepy smile. I quickly covered the windows and didn't look out of them for the rest of the night. Clayton had noticed a small crack on the wall beneath the sink in his cell. Out of curiosity and pure boredom, he took a plastic spoon, broke it, and started sawing at the crack for hours. Surprisingly, the corroded wall came apart a bit, but he needed something stronger than the broken spoon. The next day in the cafeteria, he took a chance. He found a utensil near the kitchen and sneakily put it into his pocket. Clayton would have to make it past the guard though, who luckily wasn't as attentive as he should be. For the next several nights, Clayton slowly sawed away, covering his tracks with a wastebasket. Then, after a week of sawing, he had a hole big enough to climb through. Clayton entered the tunnel, which connected to the prison sewer system. After walking down the tunnel, he didn't know where it would lead, but still, he went through. When he got to a small source of light, he realized that it was a window from a small janitor's closet. Thankfully, the door was unlocked. From there, he climbed out of the window in the closet, lowering himself with blankets he took with him. Once at the bottom, he walked right out into the parking lot, leaving the premises. I had this one coworker named Steve, who I always found a bit creepy. He never did anything that would cause me to report him, but a lot of small things that made me concerned. Little comments or staring at me in a creepy way. I mostly just ignored it though. I had tried to avoid him or keep the conversations polite but short if we ever had to interact. But one day that all changed. I found myself working late. When I left the office, I remember walking out to my car, and I noticed that there was another car nearby running. I thought nothing of it, got into my car, and drove home. When I arrived back, I went inside my house, changed, and made some food and watched TV. Pretty soon, I was tired and went to sleep. But the next thing I knew, I woke up in the middle of the night. I wasn't sure why, but I groggily looked around the room. Then, I looked at my bedroom window and I noticed Steve right outside looking in. It was the scariest thing I had ever seen. I quickly reached for my phone and called 911. By the time the cops got there, Steve was gone. He never showed up to work again either, and I never heard anything more about him. For some background, I'm a woman, and this happened last year. I used to be able to walk to and from work from my apartment on a shortcut through this nature path. One time, I was walking down the path after a long day of work. There was typically never anybody else on the path, and I had rarely ever seen anyone. This day was no different. It was completely empty, and I calmly made my way home. I remember that I randomly was taking my phone out of my pocket and my nail caught on my clothes. I got a slight hangnail. Luckily, I always kept a nail file in my other pocket just in case. Just as I was stopped there on the path, I reached to get it. At that same time, I heard the sound of something moving a little ways in the woods behind me. I figured that maybe it was an animal and I looked over, but I didn't see anything and the noise quickly stopped. So I just kept walking as I filed my nail. For some reason, I had a bad feeling, like I didn't want to look and see what was causing the noise, even though I had seen animals before and I wasn't afraid of them. So as I kept walking and had made it a distance away, I looked back. When I did, I saw the same spot where I had heard the noises, and there was a man standing halfway behind a tree just staring at me. I turned and kept going, and the man never came out of the woods. What he was doing, I'm not sure. Mr. Benson had been pulled over by police and left his car when the police smelled an odor of drugs and asked to search his vehicle. He was sitting in a police car in the meantime, and he realized that the cops would find his drugs, so Mr. Benson got an idea. He moved up into the front seat of the police car, and without hesitation, he drove away. When the police saw this, they called backup and rushed back to the other vehicle. Mr. Benson had a head start though, and immediately turned down another street. He was able to lose the tail because the police weren't sure where he went, but they started to search for him locally. Mr. Benson then drove down another quiet road, turning on the lights and pulling over another car. His plan was to ditch the police car and steal the pedestrian's vehicle he had pulled over. However, when the driver of the car Mr. Benson pulled over saw him get out and not a cop, the driver fled. Mr. Benson heard sirens in the distance and knew he couldn't return to the cop car, so he ran into the woods. Mr. Benson ran as fast as was possible for him, as tree branches hit him left and right. But minutes later, he heard a police dog after him and had to give it up. I was in bed fast asleep one night. Out of nowhere, I woke up to the sound of somebody knocking at my window. I sat up in bed and looked to the window, but it was covered. The knocking stopped, and only then did I get up to go look. When I did, nobody was there, but there was a post-it note on the other side. I couldn't see what was on it. It looked like there was writing on it, but I couldn't read it, and I didn't dare go outside. After a long time, I was finally able to fall back asleep. The next morning when I got up, I went outside to look at the note. When I arrived at the window, I picked it up and looked at it. When I read it, the note said, "You should lock your back door." Confused, I looked up, and just then I saw somebody walking into my bedroom. I ran away to a neighbor's house, called the cops, and waited there. When they arrived, the man who was in my house was gone, and so was my wallet, laptop, and several other valuables. I worked at a clothing store in the city. One time, this guy came into the store and was just kind of standing around for a long time. At first, I figured he was looking, and I helped a few other customers. But several hours later, he was still there, and it seemed odd. I went to go ask him if he needed any help, but he quickly walked away and out of my sight. After that, I became busy helping other customers check out for a while. I forgot about the man and figured that he left. I got off of work in the late afternoon and left the store. I was walking home because my apartment was close by. The first sidewalk had a good amount of people on it, but when I turned to a quieter one, I heard just one set of footsteps behind me. When I looked, it was the same guy from the store. Instantly, I got nervous. I walked faster, but he seemed to do the same. I was only near other apartment buildings and it was really quiet. I looked around desperately. Then I noticed a woman leaving an apartment really close to me. I quickly went up to the door and asked her to hold it for me. Thankfully, she did. I got inside and the door locked behind me. I stood in the lobby and watched the man stand around for a while at the window, and then after 10 minutes, he finally left. I've been using the deep web for a few years now. I usually use it only when I can't find certain ebooks on the regular internet. So this one time I was messing around and in the directory looking for useful dark websites. I found an online service site that claimed to deal in killers, weapons, and stolen things. Needless to say, I was fascinated with it. I've seen regular e-commerce websites, and I wondered how similar one that exists for mostly illegal activities would look. So as it loaded, I got a pop-up from the browser saying that it had prevented the website from using this function and that, and suddenly my webcam light lit up. It was basically like a bad jump scare for me. There I was trying to look at a website which is probably operated by some criminal organization, and for all I know they have my face stored away somewhere for reference in the compilation of future kill lists. I exited the browser and shut down my computer so fast. I was impressed at the speed which I did it in. That's how scared I was. This was in 2014, and I just avoided the dark web for the next 2 years until I needed it to download a book which I could not find anywhere else. Since that incident, I've never again ventured away from my ebook websites. In hindsight, it could have been and probably was something else because Google Chrome and Skype were both open as well. But you always get that ring whenever somebody Skypes you. And I'm mostly certain my computer was not on mute because I always listen to iTunes while on the internet or doing anything that doesn't have audio itself. So I continue to steer clear of any more exploring on the deep web. When my stepdad was growing up, his dad was in the Air Force very briefly. When my stepdad was around 5 or 6 years old, his dad was deployed in Missouri, and they lived in a suburb right outside of the base. His dad worked during the night, and his mom stayed home. My stepdad wasn't much of a sleeper at that age, and he usually stayed up until the late hours of the night with his mom. So one night at around 2 a.m., my stepdad was playing in their living room with some yarn, and his mom decided to take a shower. In the living room, there's a sliding glass door that had no blinds and led to the backyard, which was not fenced in. There was also a pathway that wrapped around the neighborhood and cut through the backyards. So my stepdad was sitting on the carpet playing with the yarn when something outside caught his eye. There wasn't a whole lot of lampposts behind the house where the pathway was, but their porch light was on and that shed light onto part of the pathway. Standing on the lit pathway was a clown holding a balloon. Now, my stepdad knew something wasn't right, because what kind of a person decides to dress up as a clown in the middle of the night and stand on a pathway? He started to yell for his mom. Well, when the clown noticed this, he started bolting towards the sliding glass door, and my stepdad freaked out and started screaming while running down the hallway to the bathroom. He told his mom what happened, and when they went back to investigate, the clown was gone. They called the police, but they couldn't really do anything since the clown was on public property, and they didn't really think a 5-year-old kid could be a reliable witness. The clown never came around again, and my stepdad stopped staying up so late, so he's not sure if the clown came back or not. He's not sure what the clown's intentions were, but to this day, he's terrified of clowns.